people value, or they think that they value things based on what other people value, not what they value themselves.
Yet we're still as sick, as stressed, as anxious as we've ever been. How can I use these as adjuncts to change how I feel?
Make the time by eliminating the things that you don't value and putting in time with things that you do value.
All right, guys, welcome to the show. I am here with a very good friend of mine. We have a tenured history together. We've done a lot together. We've been through a lot together. We've grown together. We've seen a lot of different versions of one another. A very good friend of mine, Mike Aidala. He is a current Guinness World Record Turkish get-up holder, extraordinary human being, and somebody I'm very blessed to call a friend. So, Mike, appreciate you having me. I'm really glad you're here now.
Brother Boom, this is like conversations that we get to have all the time.
I know.
So I'm happy to be
now.
here.
It's unfortunately or fortunately, it's gonna be recorded. So, Mike, just delving into this, obviously, I know you very well. I know a lot of people who are going to watch the show know you very well, but every superhero has an origin story, dude. So tell us a little bit about Mike Aidala and the history and how did you come to be the person who's sitting across from you now?
Well, no superhero, but gosh, it's always a tough question. I was thinking about this kind of on the way here, and a story that I don't share often, but one that was really impactful for me was when I was in high school, I wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach. I thought that was like the coolest thing ever. And I went to college for being a physical education teacher because I didn't know the path to be a strength coach. I just loved working out. And then as I was graduating college, the New York Jets came to my school for training camp, and I was able to intern with their strength staff. That got me out to California to do NFL combine prep with guys getting ready for the NFL. And then I went back to New York and managed a strength and conditioning facility. Now, the story that I wanted to tell was about a year and a half into that. I was in my early 20s. I was having a lot of external success, but what I found was I wanted to do a little bit of a deeper dive. I wanted to learn more about myself. And I read this book called The Art of Nonconformity. And in that book, he highlights an alternative graduate studies program. And so he says, take ownership of your own learning and create your own school of life. And if you can develop a love for learning, then you will always be able to grow and change and write various stories for yourself. And so at that point, I was young and motivated to do that. And I saved up, I think it was $18,000 over the course of a year. And I bought a backpack and I made a route to go to Costa Rica and Peru and all these different places and study what I thought at the time was how to make people or support people being happy and healthy. And it was amazing. It took that story could be its own podcast, but like really fast, I went to Costa Rica, Peru, Easter Island, which is the most remote habitable island in the world, where you land the plane on one end of the island and it stops on the other. And they have all these big moai over the island. It's a pretty cool spot. Only 2 flights coming in a year. And then I went back, taught some English to people in Costa Rica. When I got sick with dengue fever, so almost died at 107 fever. This might explain some things in our friendship where the lights are not always all on upstairs. That's what they burned off some of those brain cells. But then I went out to Austria, Germany, did skiing, had some cool experiences there. But that, as an origin story, really solidified into me at a young age that I'm the author of the story for my life. And so from there, I've been able to do things that I'm proud of.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that people, I don't want to say underestimate, but don't know about you is your background in strength and conditioning. So when you see you doing obviously an incredibly impressive, Turkish get-up. I know you have an affinity for immersions, handstands, and they don't see like the background and your knowledge in S&C and then how you're applying it, right? Which I think is interesting, which kind of leads into the next conversation. Obviously you did, you attempted lead man, you've done ultra endurance, you have this very storied background in exploration, adventure, and blending that in with strength and conditioning. I think that's where you and I have a lot of overlap. Where did the idea of the Turkish get-up come from for you wanting to pursue this as a potential world record? What did the training look like? What did you learn in that process? Like, of all of the movements that you could have done, everything that you're already incredibly impressive individual that you could express, why Turkish get-up?
Well, it plays into a lot of my strengths. When I came back from Austria at that time, I got into yoga and I did my yoga teacher training. I taught yoga all over the country and a lot in New York City. And I got into acrobatics, partner acrobatics from that. And so I really learned how to keep my arm straight, just to keep it simple.
Yeah,
And I'm really good at locking out that arm. And
really good.
so once I learned how to do that through handstands, then through supporting other people and weights, I mean, even before that, my background was Olympic weightlifting in high school. There's just how I like to play, how I like to express. I'm a playful guy, so I'm always thinking of what are some cool, unique challenges or different things that I can do. And when I attempted Leadman 2 years ago, after that, I was down because I finished the final race, but not enough time to be official finisher or an official lead challenge finisher. And so I just wanted to play, and I started doing this thing, Turkish Get Up Tuesdays, where I just would find a random object and see if I could do a Turkish Get Up with it. And it was a fun puzzle. Like a shopping cart is one I remember. And, can you get to the bottom of the shopping cart, put it at this angle, and focus on maintaining that balance? And so, yeah, this idea of flow, and I think of it as rebalance because nothing's ever perfectly balanced. You're always falling one way or the other and trying to find that middle line. Um, Led me into thinking about the Turkish Get Up record. And then I saw that there actually was a record. So 4 years ago, I did the heaviest ever, or the heaviest. Gosh, this one's always tough for me to think. Okay, it was in 1 hour, maximum weight possible lifted by Turkish Get Up. So you do repetitive reps. And I did a 97-pound kettlebell and an 88-pound kettlebell, one rep every 24 seconds for an hour. And that was a very challenging
Yeah,
time.
I was there. Yeah, that was incredibly impressive, man. Watching you go through that.
And then at the time there wasn't a 1 RM record, and so I saw the 1 RM record when I started playing around this Turkish Get Up Tuesdays, and it was at 177 pounds. And I known that some people could do more than that. I knew I could do more than that. So I was like, all right, let's see kind of what this gets to. And then someone said it at 200 pounds. And around that time, I was looking for a new challenge after doing attempting the Linman, and thought, okay, let me see what I can get to. And in a couple of weeks, I got to 205 pounds. And then I thought, oh, let me do two plates, like 225 Kurdish get up, like that was super legit. And so fairly quickly, I was able to do that. And then on the record day before prior, did 255. And then that record actually got beat by a Turkish guy who had the 200-pound record. And so kudos to him. I mean, that's a big leap going from 200 pounds to 255 pounds. And, I think he spent a year kind of working on that and then got 257 and a half. And around Christmas time, that's a little bit after that. And then a couple weeks ago, I did 230 or 261.4, um, almost 270. But, it wasn't my day there. So that's how I got it.
What do you so when you say wasn't your day there? Because obviously we had that conversation. You're and I was honored to be a part of it and be a judge for that. Um, you wanted to make a pretty significant jump and like uh, put a capital letter on that record with a pretty big, what was it, 15 pound? I think
Yeah,
it was a 15 pound, which
it's more.
is 7 kilo,
Yeah.
7 kilo. Um, yeah. And then you didn't get it.
Mm.
Walk me through that because and one of the things I want to link here is obviously there's a business of doing hard things and challenging yourself and exploration, but then also the fact of putting yourself out in front of a bunch of people because I paced you 30 miles through Leadman as well, and you came up an hour short. You finished it, but came up an hour short. And just how dusting yourself off after making a large public commitment to Leadman, right, and then coming up short. And I know that was difficult for you.
Mhm.
And then your first day when you attempted the Turkish get up and coming up a little short. What does it take to like what do you go through mentally? What's the narrative to dust yourself off after you literally I don't like the term fail, right? Because fails, you only fail once you give up. Right. And we all know that we've done enough hard shit that's like the magic's not there every day. And it only matters on those days what you do when your name is called. It's not what you do in the gym. It's not what you do what your training looks like, what your drop score is. It's what you do when your name's called, right?
Mhm.
So dusting yourself off from the first day when we missed 275
Mhm.
to then a couple days later, and all of us kind of chatting like, dude, no, you trained this hard for it. You're gonna fucking get to you're gonna try this again. What does that look like to put yourself out there and then I'm not talking about the conversation of fail with you and I. We know that failures, it has to be a conscious decision that you just quit. I'm talking about all the people in the comment section. I'm talking about everybody else who's observing somebody that they admire come up short.
Mm.
Like, what does that look like to you? I mean, how does that feel? What's the narrative behind it? Like, how do you move past that?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't, and this is just truth. It's taken me a while to get here. I don't focus on other people's expectations of me because at the end of the day, I need to write a story for myself that I'm proud of.
Yeah.
And so, how I do that, that's what is most interesting. And like anything in life, you only grow from breaking yourself down and then building yourself back up. Now, if you don't do the build up part, then you're going to go the opposite direction. Um, but I like to grow. And so I understand that failing or not accomplishing your goal at the perfect time that you might want to accomplish it um, can be part of the process. Now, I definitely don't go into it thinking that that's going to be okay and that I want to do that. I go 100% commitment to it. But as that starts to happen, or if it does happen, then there's a quick, understanding what you can learn from that process and then making adjustments and trying again. That's like the formula, I think, for a life well lived.
Yeah.
In general, with relationship, with business, with friendship, like something's not going right. Look at what it is that caused that. What is your role in that? Which is the only thing you can control. And then what are some changes you're able to make in the future? And so for this specific one, I think probably 9 out of 10 days, I would have hit 270. And I think for that specific day, I maybe rested a little bit too long. It was high emotions going into that day because we were raising money for veteran mental health and suicide prevention. And that's something that's close to my heart and it's a heavy topic. And so you're, emoting and seeing people like family come in and they're there and supporting you in that way, and then it's a really intimate lift, like, and it's also a very complicated lift. Like,
Yeah, but
it's a lot
you have 100 people
going.
watching you go through this,
Yeah, yeah,
chanting your name, cheering. Yeah,
yeah. And so you also like you could feel like you're letting people down, But I'm really grateful for you and for everyone that came and just being so supportive of me. That ultimately really helped me be able to write that different story too.
yeah,
We're this isn't breaking news, but we're all really social creatures. And so being conscious of the social aspect of your life and who you're surrounding yourself with and what stories they're breathing into you or not is like a cheat code and the ability for you to be able to write a new story for yourself.
yeah. So now that Turkish Get Us behind you, what's next?
We're coming back for a lead challenge. So yeah, lead man 2026. I am. I know.
How heavy? How heavy were you 3 weeks ago when you broke the Turkish Get Up world record?
So I think on that day I was like 244, 246.
Yeah.
Which is 246 was the heaviest I'd ever been prior to that. Then I did some travel for work and school, and I came back, and I think with some inflammation, whatever, I stepped on the scale and I was 252, and that was like way heavier than I've ever been. And I'm like, okay, I need to before I start pounding my joints and my knees and hips and ankles on the trails, I want to drop some weight first. So that's currently the process that I'm in. I'm 10 days into what's called a protein sparing modified fast, which is, from my knowledge, and again, I'm not a nutritionist, but it's what uh, doctors will use for people that are on like a bed that they can't get up from, right? With some fancy name for that, and want to keep as much muscle on them as possible. So I'm keeping my protein super high and fats and carbs really low. And the first day, I mean, I'm in a crazy calorie deficit. The first few days were tough to go without carbs, but to be honest, I have like the maybe I don't the neurological capability to live my life 900 to 1200 calories a day, but I don't have that pop. So like, if you ask me to do a Turkish get up now, I could maybe do one, and then I'll be smoked.
Yeah.
For the next few days.
Yeah.
So it's great. Yeah, I'm down.
Go into detail real quick, just for what is the lead challenge for those people who might be listening that don't know what that is.
So Lead Challenge, Leadville is a town in Colorado. In the late '80s, there was a mine there. The mine went down, and this guy Ken Kubler came up with this idea of doing a mountain race across the mountains to try to bring tourism and more people to that town. And there was only Western states 100-mile run at the time, and so they were the second 100-miler in the U.S., I believe. And that has grown since then. That was 42 years ago, 43 years ago. And now there's a half marathon, the trail marathon, 50-mile run, 50-mile bike, 100-mile bike, 100-mile run, 10K. And the lead challenge is doing pretty much all of those races. So you do the marathon on one weekend, and then a weekend later, 2 weekends later, you do a 50-mile run, 50-mile bike, and then 3 weeks after that, you do the 100-mile mountain bike, which is like a premier event in itself. The next day, you wake up and hobble through a 10K, and then 5 days later, you finish with the 100-mile run. And you need to hit all of these within a specific time cap in order to gain this pickaxe, which solidifies you as a lead man, lead woman, lead challenger.
Yeah. So you're going back for it again this year.
So going back for it again this year.
What's different this year? Obviously, you weren't 250 when you started your last training cycle. So what are you doing different?
So what's different is I have more strength, more mental strength, more knowledge of the entire challenge, and uh, yeah, I think those are the only different. I mean, otherwise, I don't have as much conditioning training as I did before, but I do feel like the training that you put in the past helps you when you pick it back up again in the future. And like I do switch from like ultra strength or ultra endurance to heavy strength.
Mhm.
And 6 months ago, when I started Turkish get up lifting, I couldn't even front squat what I just Turkish get ups.
Yeah.
Like, but I had front squatted, to 400 something pounds in the past. So the body remembers, and I'm banking on my body remembering what it's like to run through the mountains.
Yeah. Once you've built an element of capacity, it takes, even if you lose it, as long as you're still training, maintaining, you're relatively consistent. The body gets it back significantly faster. I think I could be totally making this up. It takes about one night of the total, especially like building strength. One night of the total volume to get it back as you did when you had it.
Yeah.
And so how do you contrast this? What is interesting or fascinating or keeps you coming back to this maximal strength expression with aerobic endurance? I have my reasons. I train very similar. It looks a little different on paper and on social media, but I'm obviously fascinated with the periphery of strength and conditioning. My goal is I want to be creepy strong and highly aerobic, strong, explosive. I'm not very fast, but I'll go forever. So how do you balance out this? Why pursue both ends of the spectrum? What have you learned from it? What is there to glean? What could somebody who could be listening to this right now telling themselves, I don't know why I would ever try to express myself in Turkish get up or run 100 miles. Like, what have you learned from this that keeps you coming back?
Yeah, I want people, my biggest wish in life is for people to do the things that they deeply want to do. And when they're not doing that, I would call it playing defense. We could talk about that in a little.
We'll get into the audience.
The so for me, I didn't plan to do a heavy Turkish get up. Like I'm not planning on doing another one. If that comes up and it's something that I want to do and I'm curious about, I give myself the permission to drop all of this conditioning that I'm investing in, all this weight loss that I'm investing in, to go play with that in the future. And so I really do try to just allow my curiosity to lead in these ways. And then I want to be physically capable enough to start on those different types of journeys.
Yeah. The curiosity theme seems to be a common denominator here.
Whether it's teaching English. Right there.
Yeah. So what does curiosity means to you? I mean, for me is I always tell like the thing that you're always wondering about and the thing that where your attention's taking you, like what you're seeing in life. Because we're constantly, I don't want to use the term manifesting, but we're going to see the things that we're interested in and the way we're naturally pulled to. How do you navigate that voice between daily activities? You're now back a student at Penn. You run the offense to mindset performance coaching, which we can talk about, which I'm fascinated with. So you're balancing all of these things day in, day out, but then your attention is still like, ooh, what if?
Yeah.
Like, how do you balance all of this out? Because a lot of people would say that, like, oh, I don't have time. I'm too busy. I have X, Y, Z. So what do these, I like to call them like, it's my selfish endeavor. Like, this is the thing I'm doing for me that I need to grow and explore outside of my daily boxes that I'm checking. Right. So following that, like, you have this common theme of following that curiosity in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering, like, how you navigate that with all of the rest of the daily tasks and all the other Mike Aidala stuff. You're balancing out.
Well, I think you nailed it. There's like the daily tasks that has to get done, and then there's a space and availability to play around. And I love when people come to me and say, I don't have any time, because I've never actually had someone come to me tell me they don't have time. And then I look at their calendar and we can't find time for them to do the things that they care
Yeah.
about.
See, I've never found somebody, I've never been approached by an athlete like, I have all the time in the world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like we're all busy. We're busy doing something. We're busy doing nothing. It's like,
Well, that's a big, I mean, that's like, I equate a lot of the mental coaching with physical coaching, and you'll definitely resonate to this analogy. Um, is that in the strength and conditioning world, there's thousands of exercises and programs and ways that you can get stronger based on your goals, the time you have, the equipment that's available to you, the past injuries, whatever it may be. And there's similar ones in this mindset coaching world where there's better exercises than others. Like if you want to gain a bunch of strength, doing booty bands is not going to be as beneficial as a back squat. Same thing in the mindset world. And so the time is a question that comes up a lot. I don't have time to do the things I want to do. Must be nice. You have this time, whatever. You make the time by eliminating the things that you don't value and putting in time with things that you do value, but that you need to know you actually value.
yeah,
What often happens is people value, or they think that they value things based on what other people value, not what they value themselves. And then they don't want to make that switch because it's inauthentic to them.
yeah.
And they subconsciously recognize that. And so helping them recognize what are the things that are true to you individually. Do you have the courage to allow yourself to do those things? And then can you take action towards those? That's when people's lives change.
Yeah, I think you hear the bucket of crabs analogy a lot, right? Where it's like one person's trying to change, they're trying to grow, and they're constantly pulled down by people in their community. I think a lot of that can also be self-inflicted, where it's not that others are holding us down, it's the story that we think they think about us, we have to remain true to. And when we start to change, there can be a little pushback there, right? Um, I don't know. That's just what comes to mind for me. I think a lot of this stuff, especially in the mental skills game, a lot of self-imposed.
It can definitely be, because you have to ask questions. Like, and this is where I push people on. Like, if you as my friend, if all of a sudden I want to write a book and I say, Bo, I'm not gonna do the lead challenge. I'm gonna focus on writing a book. I know because that you support me, not the light challenge. And so you'd be like, cool, how can I help you with the book? What's up? No problem. Yeah. I know we have all these runs planned, but that's great. We do the book, like whatever. That's a true friend. But I have to ask you that. People don't go through and ask, hey, I really want to run a marathon. I know I'm overweight, but is this something you could support me with, honey? This is what supporting me would look like. If your friends or your partner are like, heck no, you can't run a marathon, you fat piece of shit. Like,
Yeah.
now we have a different problem.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
But let's get clear on what is the problem that we're trying to solve.
Yeah, but there's reality and how I'm always curious when I'm interacting with people who are having these challenges, how often that is actually taking place in real life and how many of those conversations only exist in their head.
That's what
And they don't even have the courage to say, hey, I need to talk to you about something.
they might have.
They're paralyzed with that narrative just running on the hamster wheel, and then they keep themselves in that place.
Yeah. And so, what makes you one of the aspects that makes you a great coach is you give people the permission to have that type of conversation, which oftentimes is probably all they need. Like, oh, I can do this. Someone's going to hold me accountable to it. Cool. They have the conversation. They gain the support. It's like what Mario when he like levels up and they just level up, and now one excuse is gone. And so many problems in people's lives just come from their inability to write a new story. And so if you're stuck or feel like you're stuck, you're probably just ruminating on one story. And I like to support people building a bridge to create different stories, building the strength to write a new narrative for themselves.
That's a good, I like the term, how you use the term strength there. And we can talk about that in a little bit because strength is a very broad term to me. Is I don't use it. We don't, I know, I think you would agree. We don't use it in the same way a lot of other people do. When people think about just like physical strength, but
Strength, baby.
yep, the size of your arms. That leads us into, so you also run the offense, performance mindset coaching. For people listening, because we hear this term performance thrown around all the time. Even I'm a little over it as far as the term just being used. Everything's performance, performance, performance. What is what is the mind? What is the offense? And what does performance mean to you?
So I'm gonna answer performance first because I was actually thinking about this recently because that word has always kind of thrown me off. But going back into the story that we tell ourselves, perform to a performance is to perform, to put on an act, to put on some type of play or some type of scene for your life. And the reality is we all do that. There's a reason that you wore that cool breathe hat. There's a reason that I wore these jeans or this shirt. Like we want to present to the world in a specific way. That's honest. No one like doesn't care at all. And I get back to the social creature aspect. But if you're performing or in one story that's not working for you, can you allow yourself to write a different play? And so performance coaching is looking at it's the story that you're saying, one, honest, aligned with who it is that you want to be. And then if it's not, do you have the ability to write a new script? And so that's what the offense is. Offense is living life in the driver's seat, taking action towards your biggest dreams and ambitions versus being in a defensive state where you're more reactive, letting things happen to you, trying to manage your life instead of taking that action forward with your life.
Yeah, and I have affinity for coaching, and I mean not just me being a coach, but me finding people who are really good at what they do and learning from them. And so when people think performance coaching, I think a lot of people, I don't need that, this, that, and the other. What type of people do you see? Like, what are the pain points to clients that actually reach out to you?
They're overwhelmed. They are afraid of failing. They want better relationships with themselves and partner and their kids, their friends. They want to attack some big challenge, but not sure how to get there. It can really run the gamut of, but what it all really does boil down to are relationships and relationships with yourself, with your mind, with your body, with your other people, with the community that you live in, with the job that you have, all of these things. And so if you have a fixed mentality with versus a growth mentality, fixed is I can't make the change. This is just the way the dollars are. Like there's no way that I'm able to run 100 miles. No one in my family's ever done that. So that's just out for me. I've just put a hard stop on that story. And then there's other aspects in my life that I put that hard stop on. And so one way that would be defense, again, fixed mindset, is supporting the people to create a growth mindset with that.
Yeah. So when you talk about the relationship with others, the relationship with self, I think that can even get a little fuzzy in what that term means. To me, it is the story you tell yourself about the thing you're doing, the story you tell yourself about yourself, the story you tell yourself about your relationship, about your career. So
Yeah, definitely.
okay, so go deeper into that. How are you helping people change this narrative of? I mean, because we think that the world is fixed, and or excuse me, we think that we're fixed and the world is malleable. When in reality, it's the exact opposite. The world is relatively fixed, and it's we're the things that are malleable. So how do we begin to change that? Change the story. When you say relationship, change your relationship with food. Okay, what the fuck does that mean?
Great.
How do you get into changing the
Yeah.
story around and feel like, okay, yeah, you checked the box, you knew the words. Now what the fuck are you going to do about it? So how do you help people change that story?
Yeah. Well, real fast. That is definitely a common thing. You know, like my biggest fear with doing podcasts now is that people just mentally masturbate on more knowledge, more information, and then do not actually take action towards those ends. And so, to your point of pushing, like, okay, cool, how is the number one thing I recommend. And so, um, I'm just trying to think of the best direction to take
Whatever,
this.
whichever comes to heart, you can say fuck as
Your,
much
your
as you
your
want.
question was your question was how to change the story.
How to change the story. Yeah.
So there's this interesting research on your world primal beliefs, and so primals are the way that you just naturally see the world, and we can't determine that based on knowing someone or just getting to talk to them, or even seeing how they might look. And it's pretty interesting. Like I know we haven't talked about this yet, but the primals break down from the world's a good place or the world's a bad place. And then that breaks down to it's a safe place or it's a dangerous place. And so if you see the world as a dangerous place based on how you were raised, what your dad told you when you walked around the streets, whatever it is, then you're kind of always looking for threats. And it's hard to have courage, take risks if you see the world as a threatful place. And so understanding what your primal beliefs are, like is the world a mechanistic place or is it alive? Is it beautiful or is it dull? If you can change these kind of top down beliefs, then all of the stuff on the bottom which would be like, I want more love or more hope or more agency or more well being, can be solved because it's really difficult to have those things if you see the world as a dull
Yeah.
place. And so, how do you do that? Is you start to prove to people that there are aspects that are beautiful based on the things that they want to change.
Prove to people or prove to yourself?
Yeah. Well, I'm saying prove to people like they prove to themselves.
Gotcha. And when we hear about like one of kind of the framework I always use like is the world can be different environments can be scary, right? To where somebody could feel super confident up here ripping a podcast, but then they get out and have a hard conversation with the person that's closest to them, their wife, their husband, their children, and they can't be open and honest and communicate very well. So what I'm trying to get to is this element of developing skills because
Let's use that. Let's
yeah,
the first one. Let's use that. So
exposure
if you
skills.
feel like this is a very common problem, right? With men especially, they get a lot of affirmation through their work, and maybe in their mid 40s, they've built a great career for themselves, and they finish a project, they send it to their partner at their business, and they get a lot of like, nice work, that's awesome. Here's some bonus for whatever it is,
Yeah.
the accolades. It feels good, and then you go home and you don't get that same type of response. So naturally, you're going to want to work more because you're getting more of that feedback. If you want to have a better relationship or you want to have the ability to have those conversations, you need to know what are the areas that you struggle with. Is it like difficult looking sitting down across the table answering how you feel? Could you have the ability, this would be a skill, to like ask for some space, like, hey babe, that's a great question, I need a little bit of time to think about that, can I come back to you in 5 minutes? Walk away, take 5 minutes, think about the question, maybe journal some thoughts down, come back, say, hey, I took 5 minutes. This is kind of what I wrote, but I realized I want to take a little bit longer to sit with this. Can we circle back tomorrow at this specific time and come back to the conversation? Like, I imagine that the person that you're caring about, if you bring that much intention to wanting to improve the relationship, that's going to be really powerful. Another one that I've used in the past is just writing things down. Right? If you want to say something that a grievance or something that you're struggling with, and it's difficult to bring it up because you might have a story of why does anyone care? What is that I think? Taking time to actually process that so you get clear on, wait, what is it that I actually think?
Sure.
Not just I'm mad, so I want to be mad, but what are the feelings that I'm thinking? And it kind of, especially if you can come a little heat, like I know I can, like I want to get it out first, I get that first spray out of the way, and then I can amp it down, and then I can bring whatever it is that I'm feeling, whatever that boiled down to my friend or my partner, like in a digestible way that they can understand,
Yeah.
which is the number one thing to think about in conversation. How can I express X in a way that that specific person can understand? Like for you, I'm not going to come and talk to you like, hey, Bo, this is something that I've really been like. I know you're like, come on, dude, get to the point, right? I might come to you after I had some coffee or after a workout or something, but I might come to someone else in a different type of way. And so building that strength to be able to have that variety of conversation, it would be a skill that someone can work on.
Yeah. Well, when I think two things come to mind when I hear the word skill, I think fluency and competency. Fluency, if I'm learning a language, I'm going to stumble through it I might be able to ask where the bathroom is and a color and pick out a certain color, rojo, right? But I can't write poetry in it. I have to become more fluent in that language. And I think there's different languages around relationships, around self-talk and stuff like that. And there's certain skills that people can begin to develop through limited graded exposure over time. But one of my favorite quotes, and this has to come with competency, I just totally spaced the name of the book, but it was The Art of the Hero. The Art of the Hero wasn't about being brave. It was about being so competent that bravery wasn't an issue. And so when we talk about courage, right, is how do you develop competency in these areas so that the courage to act, the courage to have the conversation is no longer an issue? So how do you walk people through this level of fluency or competency? I mean, the thing that comes to mind for me is like graded exposure. How do you take somebody that has to have a very difficult conversation with their wife or their husband, and instead of just blasting this out, how do you get them to build the trust with that individual and trust themselves to then be able to have that conversation?
Yeah. Just point blank answer that question would be ask them, hey, I'd like to have a tough conversation with you. I feel like I don't have a bunch of the skills in order to do it well. are you open to kind of stumbling through this with me?
Yeah. So just being honest. At
Yeah.
the end of the
Just
day,
like
yeah.
if you walk into the gym, you've never been to a gym before, and the workout is 500-pound back squats for reps,
Yeah.
you're not gonna just try it. You're gonna be like, hey, I've never done that before. Like, what can we break it down to? And a term that gets thrown a lot around a lot in the coaching space are flow states.
Mhm.
Flow states are a term that comes from positive psychology, which is the science of well-being and flourishing. And flow state, as the easiest definition, is on one axis is the skill that you have, and on the other is the challenge. And this will come a lot through physical things or sports when people feel like they're completely dialed and in the zone, they're in that state of flow. But I think of it also in terms of relationship. Like, do I have the skills based on a challenging conversation so that I can be completely present? If I don't have enough skill for the challenge, I'm be anxious. If I have too much skill for the conversation, I might be bored.
Right.
And so how do I, maneuver both of these axes so I can be in that flow state, which is the state of peak human experience?
Sure. So going back to the not going directly back to the bucket crab scene, but I know a good way to do that is through getting reps in practice
Sets and reps,
with
baby.
other people who are in kind of having the same challenge as you do. And that's the other half of the offense is this community. I don't know if it's a full brotherhood. I don't know if you work with females. I know a majority. I've been to your men's groups. And I think those groups are a good opportunity to maybe you're just brand new to this, but you can hear how other men can communicate and interact. So where does community and the brotherhood, where does this side of the offense play into helping people get these sets of reps?
Yeah, I mean, this is not necessarily a part of the of my men's group. They're not necessarily a part of the offense, but they're a part of me and my heart. You know, again, I feel like when people don't have that capacity to write a different story, they internalize it, and over time, that hurts them, and it can lead to their death in the worst case scenario. And that's happened for some of my friends and family members, and you never know why people decide to end their life, but it's tragic. And so growing up, I really wasn't taught like how to express a bunch of emotions. I mean, my dad was really good at being able to be like a softer type of man and be a little bit more open with his emotions. But then coaches and just mainstream, growing up on American Pie, like that's not part of society. And so I kind of had three main emotions that I was allowed: happy, mad, and sad.
Yeah.
And so if I was feeling frustrated, I'd have to fit in one of those buckets and probably fit in the mad or sad bucket, and I don't like being sad, and so it would go in the bad bucket. And so I would just be mad at you. And then what would that do? That would break down our relationship because you wouldn't know why I'm mad at you because I never gave you the opportunity to see me in a different way. So after a while, I'd walk around thinking like, gosh, no one gets me. No one sees me. No one understands me. I'm this lone wolf. I just need to do it on my own. That's a really lonely place to be. And so if you're feeling lonely, think about, well, am I actually giving people the opportunity to see me, to understand me? What version am I allowing people to see? Is it just this performative aspect in this one area that's not aligned with who I truly am? That's kind of like the asterisk to the performance. Is it's great if it's true. It can be more damaging if it's not. And so the men's groups are an opportunity to sit around in a circle and smoke about 30 pounds of meat because it's a lot easier to talk about feelings when you're fed,
Yeah.
and each guy gets a few minutes to practice what I call emotional fitness.
Mhm.
And so, again, playing out this fitness strength theme, um, I pass out a sheet that has like 50 different feelings on it. And we get to practice just talking about our emotions to other people. And there's no feedback, no one's giving any type of advice. It's just thanks for sharing, and then move on to the next person. And after hearing 15, 25 people share things that they're struggling with or that are going really well for them, you start to have what's called an autobiographical recall, where you see yourself in someone else's story and it helps you feel more connected to them, more connected to yourself, and more connected to the world around you, which like is an anti it's like the antithesis of being lonely.
Yeah. Um, one of the things I want to highlight there is it's well, people will see because you'll post about men's group and I'll reshare it. We get this. It's the ones I've been to have been absolutely amazing. They're all rad people. It's not there's still a certain stigma. I like the progress that we're making in the area, But I still think there's a stigma with a bunch of with the way it's not portrayed, but the way people see if there's a men's group, it's like, oh, it's just a bunch of soft dudes sitting around talking about their feelings and all this stuff. And I know that's not the truth. You know that's not true. I mean, the average back squat at one of your at one of these is probably relative far higher than what the national average would be, right? These are all strong, successful, fit. They come from various backgrounds. They're all professionals. Some of them may not be, but the common denominator seems to be people who are challenging themselves in life, and like they need help, and they know they need practice, they need help, they need support. So what would you say to the people who see, oh, there's a men's group or something, like what is the difference between the narrative of what people might portray a men's group to be the truth?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for all men's groups, but for mine, it is open to any man that wants to come. And so, yeah, it naturally attracts because I am a physical person, like my friends and people that are like that. But there's also people that come that really struggle to get to the gym or struggling to maintain their health or struggling to like go after the things that they want in life. And there's people that come that are feeling really great and have just sold their business for millions of dollars and they still want to come. And so I think of it as like emotional insurance. It's like you want to continually invest in this aspect of yourself. And there's just not that many opportunities in our culture to do that. Like when I was in college and I was binge drinking all the time, we always have these like heart to hearts with your boy at the
Oh
bar.
yeah,
And like,
yeah.
I love you, man. It's like, that's appropriate because it's at that
Because
scene.
you're kiss drumming in college and just
Right.
yeah. Right.
But we, there's a desire there. Like we all really want that. And so if we all want that, let's just be like, hey, we can do everything. Like we can do these other aspects. And we can also talk about our emotions and it's cool and keep it in this container. And so it doesn't need to be like everything is a men's group forever. And I'm always gonna be just like only sharing about my emotions and my feelings and never taking action towards some things. But there's a safe container that's available to do that. I think that's really powerful. And that goes into your question before about relationships, like setting up the container beforehand with your friend or your partner. Say, hey, I'm really struggling with this thing. Do you have time today where I can just verbally vent about it? I don't need any advice. I just want someone to like listen to me and maybe give me a hug.
Yeah, and that goes back to even the stigma. There, I think there is a negative stigma even around strength, to where I would see strengths like, do you have the strength to be vulnerable? There's not, and the metaphor I always use is there's not a single person who gets a Medal of Honor without making themselves. The only way to get a Medal of Honor is to make yourself vulnerable to enemy fire. So strength and vulnerability in my book, maybe not everybody else's, but they go hand in hand. Are you strong enough to disarm yourself and be potentially, we know it won't happen, but put yourself in enemy fire by this way of judgment from others that you also have weaknesses, downfalls, demons, places you're
Or if
working on.
people judge you in those ways, great. But
Totally.
you better be with those, like you want to engage with those
Yeah.
people anyway.
Right.
And so, the frame is a lot of people, you already are vulnerable. It's just doing it a different way. Lifting weights is vulnerable. You're gonna fail. If you want to get stronger, you could lift 30% of your 100 max all day, play really safe, not be vulnerable, and not get stronger. But if you want to grow, you have to kind of flirt with that line and just recognizing where's the challenge, meeting the skill that I have, and do I have the capacity to go there? And like my group specifically, you can come to it and say, hey, this is a little much, just want to listen. You have to share. Like you might want to after you hear other people talking, you feel that support, but advocating for yourself is something that I would recommend for a lot of people.
Yeah, there's no secret recipe of back squats at 115 pounds can help you squat 500 pounds. It doesn't matter the protocol, it doesn't matter all, it won't happen. You have to begin to play on that periphery. And if we can learn through, I still think physical training is a phenomenal vessel to learn these things, right? Learn these larger metaphors, but it's like, can you find that 3 to 4% edge where you're just a little uncomfortable? Put yourself in that environment, get some reps in, and it also happens to be it behooves you to be around other people who are fluent in this. And that's what I did a whole year of executive performance coaching. And one of the things that my homework was when I was done was, now how are you going to keep this going? Because like the overarching theme of a monk never retires, right? You don't just win level 100 monkness and you're like, oh, game over. I can just go do what the fuck I want now. It's like, how are you going to continue to keep these skills sharp? How are you going to continue to keep the blade sharp? And so one of my challenges was you're going to need to find a community to continue to hone these skills and keep them sharp for when you need them. And so I think for the people listening, I think the men's groups are a phenomenal opportunity to sharpen that blade. And even if you're stumbling through it and you don't feel confident in yourself now, it's a good way to gain fluency by seeing other people who are fluent in that language. Just watch them interact. When we would do our men's groups or even our athlete symposiums, you would have the people who were highly seasoned in that area. And then you'd have people who would just come in and was like, just observe, just listen. And for men, I think it's important to just sometimes sit down and listen to how men, like I said earlier, can communicate and articulate these ideas and those feelings. Because if you ask most men with, mad, sad, angry, that's about it. They don't know frustration, concerned, anxious, like joy. That's a big one. And like anything else with fluency, it's like you can paint with 3 colors, you can paint with 1,000 colors. And the more colors you have on your palette, the better picture you can begin to create. And that pictures your self-authored life, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, again, it's fun to chat with you about this because we go back and forth with the strength training analogies and with the life analogies. And, if you have more physical capacity, you can express that in different ways. I like to express it in the Turkish get, random lift, but it's just something I enjoy doing. I also like to do hand balancing. I think handstands are a great tool because you can never master it. You can never be a perfect hand balancer. There's always, different variations and skills to add on to that. And then just thinking of it as life, like what is I was recently chatting with Arthur Brooks, who's like one of the top social scientists, and he was talking about keeping your life as a campus. So it's like you're always in school, you're always learning, you always do better mentally, or at least statistically, people do better mentally when they're in school or on a campus or in that learning type of environment. But that's just a mindset. You can be in campus of life, so your school of life, and I think that's a great way of helping yourself be able to see where are these opportunities that I have for growth and where can I learn some more of those skills.
Sure. And one of the things I want to delve into was within the fitness industry, and I know there are a lot of metaphors here, but between capacity and aesthetics. And I always see I'm very passionate about capacity in what I call skill-based physical expression. Right. And there's a lot of lean it back. Lean it back. With skill-based physical expression to where like the way that I train and the way that you train is you said it yourself, there's no level 100 boss in gymnastics. There's no level 100 boss of fitness that you just win and you're like, cool, I'm just being a champ of fitness. I don't have to do anything more. You're always going to be challenged on another level. Whether you're in jiu-jitsu, black belts get choked out all the time. Mm-hmm. Black belts get choked out all the time. And they're constantly learning. Climbers are having to constantly challenge themselves. And then they can express that jiu-jitsu or that climbing however they want. So within fitness or life, like how do you continue to find skills that you need to polish up on?
I don't think of it like I need to polish up on these skills.
Mhm.
I enjoy doing that.
Yeah.
So I like the Shoshin beginner's mentality. I'm currently in the middle of that right now, getting back into ultra endurance running. The paces and my heart rate zones I were at years ago when I would do more of the running is very different. And so cool, this is where I'm at now. I can't change it without going through the process, but I can just focus on the progression. And so what's nice is in the beginning, you grow really fast. And so it's really motivating to see your pace get a little bit faster, your heart rate get a little bit lower, and focus on those things. So again, it's not a need, but it's a desire. And that I think is a big change for people because if a common problem I see is people consuming so much external information, comparing themselves to other people and what they should be doing versus what is it that I want or desire. And if you really ask yourself, like, what is it that I truly deeply desire? And then do that daily actions, weekly actions, whatever yearly actions that I'm doing align with that. And if they don't, there's going to be some dissonance with how you feel about yourself. And if they do, you probably are feeling great.
Sure. How many things have you been roped into? Because I think I'm going to give you an example. People ask me to do high rocks to them all the time. And I'm like, absolutely not. Mm-hmm. Like, it just won't happen. It has nothing to do with high rocks. It has everything to do with I trained in all of these other, I did competed in CrossFit, strongman, powerlifting. I did all these things. If I'm going to blow a bunch of money to go travel and go do something cool, I'm going to be outside with my friends in the Grand Canyon or in the Bahamas or go do something because that's what I want to do now. But that didn't come without a lot of exposure being dragged to go do other things. Does that make sense? And so, how much what I'm getting at is you have to check out, I believe you have to check off a lot of boxes of things you don't like. I think those are as important as and help you whittle down the things you do like.
Yeah, I think that's true. But I imagine that again, someone listening to this now, you probably can think of things that you, when you were at, you were like, I wish I wasn't here. I wish I did something.
Exactly. Yeah. For sure.
So I wouldn't say you need to practice more of that. You just need to reflect on what those were and let those live a little bit louder for yourself, and then invest in the things that do like or do you are curious about. I think what you're doing, bringing people on these like big odysseys and adventures, is one of the most important things in a human being's life. I mean, it's literally what I'm writing my thesis on, is like how in-body challenge, physical challenge, is a meaningful vehicle to purpose or to meaning, agency, and well-being in life. And this is something that people have been doing forever, like pilgrimages, Jesus's 40-day fast, like rites of passage. And we've been using our bodies as a way to create more meaning, create different stories for ourselves, have those stories reflected back. And sure, High Rocks could be some type of vehicle in that, but based on the research, it's not showing as much.
Oops.
Of,
Sorry, guys.
yeah, it's not as powerful as like big open nature can be,
Sure.
in terms of an awe-inspiring thing that does have the tendency to make you feel small, put you in a different perspective, and get out of the ego me and create more of the like communal we.
Yeah, but also they're all stepping stones. Or in my opinion, these things should be stepping stones to the next thing. A lot of people just get off they're like, nope, I'm getting off the third floor. I don't need to see what's on the other 10 floors. This is me. Right? Because they think they're fixed, because they have that fixed mentality. And this is a lot of with fitness, a lot of people identify with it. And also it's challenging when people also make money through identifying with it. But I don't want to spend too much time there. I do want to go into when you said purpose, agency, and
Well-being.
well-being. And we have millions of people who are sitting at home. Some of them may or may not be watching this podcast, who are trying to scroll their way to purpose. And my thing is, you're not going to find any purpose sitting on your couch. You're going to find purpose by going out in the world and doing things and instilling purpose in them and see if it's fulfilling. So let's have, what are your thoughts on how are you helping people, or how can people begin to establish or even whittle down what their purpose is?
So, real brief, my caveat: I do not hate High Rocks.
Yeah.
Also, don't do that. There's a lot of people that love it, and it's great. And I think the biggest aspect that makes it popular is that you are doing it in a community, like you're running right by people, and they can see that
Sure.
emotion on your face. That's important because that's vulnerable. Um, and so when I think of like these bigger questions in life, like my purpose, my meaning. There's a new term that I've learned about called mattering. You know, it's not rocket science. Like, do I matter? And it's thinking about like why does my life matter? Like these big existential questions. And then if you don't have answers for that, probably are not in a mental space, but you have the opportunity to do things to prove to yourself that your life does matter. Put yourself in different environments to support and serve other people. That's a big one when I look at purpose, is what are my curiosities? Like an exercise that I do with my clients is I write down 30 things that they've ever been passionate or curious about in detail. And so if you've, instead of writing I'm passionate about fitness, right? I'm passionate about heart rate zones and ultra marathons in the mountains. Or I'm passionate about food. I'm passionate about Taiwanese noodle dishes from this specific region in Pilot. And then we take those 30 and we start to see where the similarities, where are the commonalities between them, and we whittle it down to 5. And then after that, we write down 10 big problems that you see in the world, things that are important to you. For me, men's mental health is definitely one of those problems. Physical well-being is another one of those problems. This whole meaning, purpose, agency is one of those problems. And so then when you match your specific curiosities and the things that you're naturally drawn to with the things that are closest to your heart, that's where you can get into developing and creating your purpose. And then the most important part, to your point, because so far I've just been on the couch, is
Yes, thank you.
what is the action
Right.
that you can go out and do in the real world that's related to that? And so the crossing for cystic fibrosis is a great example, right? That's something that you're curious about. You probably love the ocean, you love challenging yourself, you love being in community, you love the sunshine, you love all these aspects of it. Purpose, you love the support, you love Travis and the story and supporting the people that have cystic fibrosis and the heart behind it. Then you match those with an 85-mile prone paddleboard across the Atlantic Ocean. Like, that helps reinforce all of these other things, reinforces the authorship that you have for your life, and then allows you to go on and take on any other endeavors that you have.
Yeah. Um, Second term you use, and this is something you're starting to hear. I've loved this word for a long time, but you're starting to see it come up in the scene, and people are starting to discuss what's the concept of agency. And so, in your definition for the people at home, how what is agency and how do we define it?
Believing that you have the ability to be the author of your own story.
Mhm.
And so it's pretty interesting. Like, one of my professors is Martin Seligman. He's about to retire, but he's a founder of positive psychology. He basically came up with this idea uh, early in his career. He said, okay, all the psychologists are looking at problems in people's lives. What about things that are pretty good? How do we get them from 60 to 80% towards 100%? You know? And what are the methods that with evidence that can help move people in that direction? And installing agency into people is definitely one of those things. And the question that he's asking, and he's got a new book coming out soon, but it's like, when did agency start? Like, have humans always had this, or was it God gave me these powers? I am not in control of it, but it's been given to me from the spirits or from something else. And so, whatever it is that you believe helps you write that authorship of your own life, I think is really important. And then doubling down on those type of aspects. Um, but again, that word can also be like, it can be really big. And then, so I really do like this term of mattering. And mattering gets broken down usually into four categories. There's transcendent mattering, which is I matter based on God, the universe, something larger. Like, if you're really religious, that might be an answer. Social mattering, I matter to my friends, my family, my kids. Heroic mattering, this one's pretty interesting. It's like I matter based on the story that I tell myself and the importance of excellence that I strive for. So, like, Michael Jordan has some type of heroic mattering, but he actually also has this last one, which is like competitive mattering. So it's like I only matter based on how I beat other people.
Yeah.
Like a zero sum game. And so if you know what these are, then you can look in your life like, well, I want to have a better relationship with my kids. Can I volunteer to be one of their sports coaches? Now all of a sudden I matter in this new way. Or I want to be a different, like, I want to level up in my career. Well, what add-on can I do? How can I like sign up for something that gives me the opportunity to be vulnerable by putting myself out there, but also to matter?
Yeah, interesting. So going back to, I just want to touch on when you said the guy signing up for his kid's soccer team. I think there's an element of purpose that has to do with service.
Oh
That's,
yeah,
that's close to my heart. What does that mean for you? Where do you see this element of service serve your purpose?
that rhyme. Service serve my purpose. Yeah, I don't think you can have purpose without service.
Yeah.
And so the best way I like to think about service is what are the things that are most meaningful to me, because then I'm going to want to serve those the
Yeah.
strongest.
And that, but how do we balance that out with, I think a lot of our problems stem from thinking about ourselves too much. And we know this element of awe, right? When you feel like you're a part of something greater, not just what that does mentally, but even there's physiological, like positive physiological repercussions when we feel we're a part, or we feel a part of something greater. And I think in society and in mental health, and we spend so much time thinking about ourselves that we overcomplicate the whole situation, and we just sit there and um, ruminate in all of these concepts, these deep theoretical and philosophical concepts we're talking about, but we actually don't get out there and just do the damn thing.
Yeah. I mean, this is my kind of qualm with um, some of the studies that I'm in. Is so much of it are neck up interventions is what I think about versus neck down, and things need to be more embodied.
Yeah.
And so you can talk about theories and ideas and stuff forever, which are great and are not like they're not terrible, but without the action, then lives don't really change.
Yeah.
And so following it through with what is the specific thing that you're going to do based on the thing that you just learned, like the faster you can create an action based on some like, oh, that was super interesting. Like if you heard one thing interesting in this podcast and it made you think that you want to go do something, stop the podcast, go do the thing.
Yeah.
And then you come back and listen to it and then do it again.
Yeah.
Or if you read a book and you're like, oh, it's really interesting. Whatever it is that's interesting about that, go do that thing. Even in a small way. Because if you don't do that over time, you start to not trust those types of things. And now you're starting to want to listen to more podcasts and more books that are saying the exact same thing in different words and that feel good because you know it, but you don't actually know what.
Well, yeah, it's a mental masturbation.
For
What it
sure.
is. And we always think we're just one podcast, one self-help book, one something away from taking that corner to your consciousness just blowing out of your head, becoming one with the universe and having all the purpose and all this stuff. Um,
You're one hike away from that.
You're one hike away from that. But it just comes if you would just take the things that you just learned, like if you applied 20% of the things you've read about and podcasted about and just took action on it, you wouldn't need any other self-help books. But it also speaks to the fact that we're constantly looking externally for our answers, when I'm a true believer that everything that we need in life was born basically inside us. And it's about putting ourselves in positions and environments that challenge us to evoke it from within. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's
And learning different languages and fluencies in which to interact with that.
yeah, there's this cool like Buddhist monk story where he you look at a piece of jade and you want to create a sculpture from the piece of jade. And so real Western way of thinking about that is, okay, I need to carve this into this jade and I need to make this piece of jade, this sculpture that I want to do. Versus an Eastern way of viewing it is, it's already in this piece of jade. I just need to reveal it and take away the pieces so that it can bloom out and be what it is. And I think that's a beautiful analogy of thinking about yourself. Like it's already inside of me. I just need to nourish myself just like I nourish a plant so I can grow in the way that's most optimal to me.
Yeah. And I always use a metaphor of I've trained a lot of special operations veterans. I was involved, not directly, but adjacently involved with that community for a long time. And it's like all of those guys that made it through BUDS and all this training, they made the decision before they were ever put in the environment. The environment just evoked that from them. Right? No one stumbled their way through. You don't learn to do, how do I say this? It's not the fact that they went through this gauntlet that made them great. They were great before they went in the gauntlet. The gauntlet just vetted everybody else out who didn't have that within them. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? But I like the idea of the everyday hero, to where it's like we're all born with these things innately, some different. It's all on a gradient. But then finding the scenarios and the challenges that evoke that greatness out of you. That's already there and you don't realize it. It's just sitting there, wasted talent, wasted potential, because you're living at this mediocre 70 degrees and you're not putting yourself in the environments to actually express that greatness.
Yes. So I want to give listeners something actionable to work on with that, because what you're talking about comes down to people like giving themselves the expectation to act in a certain way and dilutes their own greatness from being evoked from them. And so the best way that I found to do this is to find out what your values are, overlay that with the way you're currently spending your time, and then see how much time you're spending doing things outside of your values. Because if you're doing a lot of that, it's really hard to listen to where your own greatness is. So kind of the like, you know who Marie Kondo is?
Mm-hmm.
Like to clean up your house, get things organized, lady. Like you want a Marine Kondo, remove the things first before you try to add better things in. Like if you're an alcoholic, you got to get the alcohol out of the house instead of like putting the vegetables in right next to.
Or reading another book about alcoholism.
Yeah, and so the exercise this, it's you imagine yourself on your deathbed, 100 years from now with some new technology. Boas 100 something years old, and you reflect back on this podcast with Mike. Until now, I've lived the perfect life. Like, there's no regret, zero regrets. I'm lying down, my partner's here, my kids are here, my great grandkids are here, my whatever friends, whoever's around me. What were the actions that I took that elicited that feeling? Then think about this for 5 minutes, pause the podcast, write these things down,
Yeah.
and then you come back and you put them into various buckets. And so at the end, I like to have people have between like 3 to 7 buckets. And I call these your activity values. What are the values that I can see you living your life that you value? So, real briefly, mine are quality time with friends and family, my health and my wellness. So, a lot can filter down into those two, my business and the impact or service that I provide, peak experiences, which would be states of awe, wonder, and flow states, like from the Grand Canyon, that's peak experience, and then learning. So ideally, all of my time can be filtered down into one of these buckets.
Yeah.
If I'm struggling mentally, I just look at how much time I'm spending outside these buckets. If I'm struggling, I already know I'm spending too much time doing something outside of here. So feel free to steal those if those resonate for you, but come up with your own in a language that makes sense, and then overlay that if you are having a tough time.
And then audit them regularly,
That's
every 6 months or yearly. And where a lot of people think, again, values seems like one of these kind of out in the ether terms. But when we talk about I define agency a little different over elements of control, and like control over yourself, right? Over your emotions, over your direction, over your trajectory, over your physical body. But where values play into this is if you don't have a decision making framework or matrix in which how to spend your time, it the things that you're doing with don't actually align. They align with you. They become very expensive. They become taxing. You begin hesitating with you. Your work sucks. You're hesitant to pick up the phone. You're hesitant to respond to emails. You're hesitant to get back to your girlfriend, or you're hesitant to go do the thing you committed to that you really didn't want to. And I see values as your rubric for decision making. And does this align with them or not? And I actually do think, for not having done values for a long time, I just did this probably in the last 6 or 7 years, but is using that as your rubric for it. Does this thing align with actually what I want to do? And then, are these values my own, or are these the values others think I should have?
Oof, the should word.
The should, right? So let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, the shoulds. I think I talked about this in every
Okay, the
podcast.
shoulds,
But
yeah.
the shoulds, that this was life changing for me when I was in my early 20s. I was an alternate shooter, man. I had no idea what was the best direction I should be leading my life. Should I be a GA here? Should I try to get a job at some sports team here? What should I do? And it was driving me nuts. And actually, at that time, my mom, she's a high school health teacher. She was on her own healing journey, and she asked me if I would go to a medium, like a psychic. I was sure. And so I go talk to this lady. She's like getting these downloads from all these people in my past, and she's like, "You're gonna kill yourself." She's like, "You're gonna if you beat yourself up like crazy." And I had never told her any of this stuff. She just knew it. And I'm like, "Yeah, you're right. I am beating myself up. I am constantly looking outside, trying to Google the answers to my life." And at that time, I learned about this idea of shoulding, which is like, I should work out more. I should eat healthier. I should have a girlfriend. I should make more money. I should have hair, like whatever it could be. And when you eliminate the word should and insert the words want or don't want, you immediately gain agency over your language. That helps you then be able to take ownership over your actions. So now you, again, are that author for your life. So I immediately know if I'm talking with someone and they're using the word should often, I have like a should radar kind of in my head. I know kind of where their mental state is. And if they don't use that word and they're really direct with the things that they prefer, want, desire, I also have an idea of where they are. So again, if you feeling like you're living in that 60 to 80%, you're maybe a little bit anxious, you're constantly maybe looking outside, you're probably using the word should a lot. I would recommend you to never use that word ever again in your life. And when it comes up, ask yourself, what do I want to do? What do I not want to do? And that's easy to understand here at Podcast CBO. It's more difficult in the real world because a lot of these answers will come down to like 51%, I want to do X, 49%, I want to do Y. Do I have the courage to trust that 51%, take a small step in that direction, and then reevaluate? Ask a question again.
Yeah, I want to go into you hear all over social media, being anxious and anxiety, And we tend to see these as always a net negative if you're anxious. And the way I see this is that anxiety is a feature and it's not a bug. I think anxiety tells us things about that don't align with our values, that are it's getting our attention to something in our external environment. Anxiety for me is never it's never about something internal. It's always something in my external environment, something that's signaling me, hey, this isn't right, or you you're thinking it's to be a net negative outcome. Um, but we see this as a bad thing.
Mhm.
That I think if we took more action, use anxiety as, I don't mean a compass as far as that direction you need to go, but a direction you need to look, and then what, following that up with some type of action.
Mhm.
So when somebody approaches you and say, Mike, I'm anxious or I have anxiety about XYZ, how do you help them with that? How do you help them navigate that scenario?
Look, I ask the why question a lot. Like, what are you anxious about?
Mhm.
Why are you anxious about that?
Yeah.
Okay, what is the fear that's going to come up from it? We break it down and like stigmatize it,
Mhm.
and then say, okay, is there a conversation you could have? Like going back to the example we gave before, I might be anxious to have a difficult conversation about moving or this new job offer I got with my partner. And so instead of just avoiding it and leaning into that anxiety and it's driving me crazy, it's going to make it harder for me in the future to have that conversation. Just recognizing it. Oh, that's why I'm anxious. Well, do I have the skills to have that type of conversation? Maybe not right now. Cool. How can I practice that? Let me write some things down. Let me talk to a friend about it. Let me maybe talk to my coach, therapist, whatever it may be about it. And now I can kind of workshop it down to, oh, hey, I need to have a tough conversation with you. I'm nervous about how it's going to go. Are you able to have it with me later today?
Yeah, that leads into this conversation I want to have, the difference between actual performance and performance theater. And when I say performance theater, I mean you're doing all of the things from the books. That could be meditating, that could be gratitude, that could be contrast, that could be ice, that could be heat, that could be sauna. And we have all of these adjuncts, yet we're still as sick, as stressed, as anxious as we've ever been. And the way, going into my definition of performance, I didn't invent this, I definitely stole it, but it's agreed. A lot of us within the circle that I play and tend to use this is fast paced decision making in moments of high consequence. And I think when you start even delving down into what that means regarding your actions, are you in line with your values? Is your decision making easy? Can you intercept stress quickly? Can you intercept the anxiety? Because when you talked about anxiety and you started asking questions, those are probably the same questions you ask yourself, right? Why am I anxious? Okay, because of this. Okay, so what actions do I need to take? I need to talk to this person. I need to do X, Y, Z. So we have all these adjuncts to intercept and learn, gain fluency, but then we don't do anything with it. And so I think there's a lot of performance theater that goes on where people are doing the right things, but they're not actually trying to apply them outside of the ice bucket or outside of the gym or outside of the meditation, outside of the gratitude. It's like everybody can be great, can express gratitude for the first 5 minutes in the morning when no one's asked anything of you yet. How are you coming back to gratitude, or how are you intercepting that stress when then you have to have the hard conversation or somebody cuts you off in traffic, right? So the difference between just doing the thing to check the box versus how are you actually applying this in real life.
Mhm.
So with this, how do you navigate when people might approach you with all the performance theater stuff and
Mhm.
you're like, bro, you don't need another book, you just need to act.
Mhm.
How do you navigate this, and where do you see it in this industry? Where do you see the difference, and then how do you use these adjuncts as tools for actual performance?
Is this where we talk about the like 5 hour morning routine?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's sun in your butthole, coffee up your ass, lay it on us.
So I recently just had a client start working with, and he went through another coaching period before we started working together, and he's talking about he's anxious about being able to fit in his morning routine. And I'm like, okay, well, what's your
You invented a problem.
yeah? And I'm making some switching in this up a little bit here, but like, what is the morning routine? What's the goal of the morning routine? What's the goal of the things that you're trying to do? And if they're find more purpose or more meaning or have a better relationship with my kids, cool. Is that the best thing that's going to give you those results? And like, when I think of performance too, like, you know, making up an example here, if you're um a parent and you have kids with someone else that you're divorced from, and you're making a transfer of those children once a week, that is a that can has the capacity to be a high stress type of transfer. And so after you do that, I might be reaching for some type of vice after I drop my kids off with their mom or their dad. That's a moment that's going to be difficult for me. Can we use situational agency to create situations and environments right after that that help put us in more alignment with our values towards things that build us up versus break us down as a reward in those type of moments? And so, um, yeah, to answer that question, I would say, continually thinking about the environments that you're in, and then uh, what are some of the actions that you want to take that elicit those
But
feelings?
then what are some of the things that you would recommend? And I'll give you an example where I don't care about a lot of the Daddy Huberman heat shock proteins and all of the physiological effects of cold and ice. I use those as an artificial environment to see how people respond to stress. Can you tune out 160 pounds of ice and just focus on your breath for 2 minutes? Just for 2 minutes. And you see how that acts as a microcosm for how people respond in other ways of their life. Another reason we use it, does it pull you out of your head into your body? Anybody that's been in 160 pounds of ice will tell you, yes, it gets you immediately into a body. You're very aware of it. And rather than worrying about heat shock proteins and all this other stuff, which is cool if that's the area you play in, do you feel better? Yeah. Did you feel better? Do you feel worse? Right. And so it's like using these, how can I use these as adjuncts to change how I feel? And if I change how I feel, I can now act differently. Does that make sense? So it's like, what adjuncts do you actually recommend people explore so that they can put themselves in the best scenarios or create the best environment so that they can act and have the control they want to have?
Yeah. Again, it depends on what their goals are, what they're struggling with. People making one up now, like who ruminate a lot and are thinking about, disembodied, would be to walk. A lot of times after like a tense work period during a transition before you go to lunch or before you go to your next meeting, taking time to just walk outside for 10 or 20 minutes has been a huge game changer in switching up that environment. It's not rocket science, but it really works. And so if you actually get your ass out of your chair and leave your phone behind and go out and walk, it it creates a different neurological pathway that allows more things to be open and opportunities to arise. But you need to look at, to your point, like if you are doing the 10,000 step morning routine, why are you doing it? And then are these things eliciting that? Like the cold can be really great for the nervous system regulation that you've described. If you recognize that in a heated environment or an argument or conflict, I have a tendency to get really tense and create a lot of fire. Well, can I use the ice? Can I prescribe it to myself for a month? And every time I go in, I'm trying to calm myself down so I don't have terrible road rage, or I don't bark back at my kids, or I don't get short with my employees. Cool. Now, if they're a month, how did that transfer over? And you start to just make those correlations in your mind, or you can do it with a coach. That starts to help you actually change your life in a way that's meaningful.
Yeah. When it comes to the ice, and I'm running a group through this Sunday. My favorite, one of my favorite aspects of running people through cold starts before they even get in. And it's when they approach the 160 pounds of ice and they're already telling themselves a story. So they're walking up, and as soon as they see the ice, and I'm like, stop. How are you breathing? Like, take a look around. It's 70 degrees. You're in Denver, Colorado. You're around awesome people. You're in a gym. There's absolutely no reason to be having this physiological response. You're not even in the ice yet. You've already lost your agency due to something that hasn't even happened yet. So the story you're telling yourself before you even get in the ice is already influencing you. So when you have to have that hard conversation, when you have to go fire somebody, when you have to break up with somebody, when you have to then, what story are you telling yourself before you even get in there? You're not even showing up, and you're not showing up to that scenario in the state you need to be in. You're already wired, you're already anxious, your heart rate's already jacked, you're already breathing shallow. So rather than, if we're going to use the ice, let's use it from the story you tell yourself before you even get in. Can you get in there calm and controlled? Can you just approach it? Can you jump in and not flinch? And then you have 5 breaths to gain control, right? And that's how we use that. That's how I use that as a tool before you have to have that conversation. It was like one of the examples I use. I have told this story on a couple podcasts. One of the first podcasts I did years ago, 2 days prior, I'm like, dude, I'm going to kill it. I know exactly what I'm going to say. I have my spiel. And then like 40 minutes before the podcast starts, I'm like cleaning my bathroom. And I'm just like, because it's like, dude, what are you doing? Like I noticed the fact that I was already kind of ramped up, nervous and anxious. So, okay, now's the opportunity for me to shift gears, downreg, breathe, chill, relax, get my mind off the podcast. And then you walk into the podcast and you just do the thing. So that's when I'm talking about using these as an adjuncts. Is like with the routine, with the adjuncts, are we actually using these as an artificial environment to get good reps in for real life?
Yeah. I mean, I love the, you were describing, my brain goes right into like these uh, interventions that can be done to elicit the responses. So, like, the cold in the moment is a great teacher. It's also really hard. And so, what could be cool, my unsolicited advice, if like for the next group that I will run, or if you are to do this group, would be even before we even bring out the ice, like, why do you want to practice dealing with uncomfortable sensations in your body? Where in your life does that show up? People write things on with my kids, with my partner, with myself. Great. We're going to use the ice as a tool for that. They go through that experience, right? They have a deeper why that's connected to their life. Then partnering them up and making them exchange information to see if that actually worked the next week. So schedule a time the next week or two, check back in with your partner. Hey, how did you do on X, Y, or Z thing you're focusing on? Do you feel like the ice was helping you do that? Or the cold showers that you're continuing to do supporting that? Those are cool, just like add-ons that bring the social community component to it and link it with something that they deeply care about, which is like their friends, their family themselves, versus like just doing cold.
Do it for the gram.
Yeah.
Even freaking out.
Yeah.
I'm being overly dramatic about it. But also balancing that out with, guess what? Like, I have, for the first time in human history, there are more people that are dying from overconsumption than starvation, which I think is its own conversation. Is absolutely wild. But it's like these innate, like, it's okay to be cold. It's okay to be hungry. It's like, can you live in these states, even for brief periods, and not feel like you have to respond and take care of it right now? It'll be okay. You know what I mean? And I think there's a beauty in that type of, I don't even say that it's really only discomfort if you allow it to be. Right? It's like, oh no, I can feel this thing without responding to it. And I think that's one of the where some of these adjuncts can be useful, and just learning that you have control of your response.
Yeah. I mean, I was fortunate to just take a class from, again, this guy Arthur Brooks at Harvard at the business school, and the class is called Leadership and Happiness. It's like one of the top premier classes that everyone at the business school wants to get into, and the class title was The Meaning of Your Life. Right, he's coming out with a new book probably out about when this podcast comes out, How to Find the Meaning of Your Life, and he's got all these steps, and one of the main ones is boredom, allowing your default mode network of your brain to turn on. And that is what we're missing because we have such access to stimulation. And so consciously removing the stimulation from your life to allow that bored state is going to be a superpower in an AI tech driven future to answer questions that AI and technology can't answer, which are the ones we're talking about now. What's the meaning of my life? Why do I matter? What's my purpose? You have to find those through like old school things like being bored.
Yeah, this was one of the things, and obviously with Arsenal, we do blood work and NAD and peptides. One of the things that I've been noticing is when people, an NAD drip takes a long time. Sometimes it depends on how well they tolerate it. It can take like an hour and a half. Some people might sit for like 3 hours because they're very sensitive to it. But I've noticed this common denominator where people are complaining about NAD making them tired. All of these people are getting the midday. right? It's like 11 a.m. or 2 p.m. And they're all saying, "Oh, this NAD makes you tired." And I've observed it's like I don't think they're tired. I think you're just having an adult actually sit still and be
Mhm.
forced to be with themselves for an hour and a half. And that's when it's like, oh, you slowed down. You're not worried about the email, the meeting, the this, the this, the this. And I think you're probably just chronically burned out, right? You're probably, and now that you're actually sitting still in the middle of the day, you've been tired all damn day. You're just now giving yourself the space to actually feel it because you're just constantly stimulated. It's like go, 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 go. And when you sit down, you're like, oh shit, that's when you yawn and you're like, oh dude, I don't want to do anything. It's like because you've been force feeding it all day.
Mhm.
So you're burned out, you're stressed. You spent 5 hours on your morning routine, which should have taken fucking 10 minutes. You could have gotten all this out of the way.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to talk a little bit about rites of passage and nature-based psychotherapy. If we could chat about
Sure.
that for a moment. So I was thinking of continually learning as one of my values and curiosity, like what are different aspects of emotional matriculation, and one that I've always resonated with was some of my ancestral past were rites of passage, specifically Native American rites of passage, and looking at the emotional maturity of your life and how are you really growing on a kind of heart level versus just a head level. And the way that I was taught and have guided a few folks on was through wilderness rites of passage, where you go out into a wild place where you only surround yourself with raw nature. And the reason to do this is you want to grow from an adolescent into a true adult. And the map that I use is the four directions. And so the east would be like a young baby, the south would be like an adolescent child, like elementary school, middle age, where everything's very egotistical. Me. I want this. Give me that. The West is like the Wicked Witch of the West, the darkening of the soul, the the demons of our lives. And then the North is your true North. What's your true vision, purpose, meaning that you want to bring into this world? And then you go back to the East as an elder to help support, the community at large. And so, what I believe we have in general in this culture, and I mean this like westernized culture, is a lot of false norths. A lot of people who have the cars, the money, the success externally, but emotionally are living in the South with a very ego based, self centered reality. And they're struggling with some of these bigger questions because they do not allow themselves to go through that West. And so a rite of passage or a wilderness quest is 4 days, at least this is the way that I lead them, 4 days in a wild place where you're only taking in raw nature. You don't have your phone, you don't have a book, you don't have any like journal, you don't have any type of distraction. You just have the clothes on your back, clothes to keep you warm, a tarp, and 4 gallons of water. Uh, and you go through different rituals and different ceremonies, and you're trying to find your own truth in the most honest place possible, which is wild nature. Because trees are just going to grow towards the sun. Animals are going to piss, eat shit, whatever they're going to do when they want to do it. And your story reminded me of this because when I went on my quest, I slept so much, and I was just like, I felt my nervous system just totally drop in. And after a few days of not digesting food, your ego reduces. You don't have energy to create these old stories for
Sure.
yourself. And what a lot of
That's it.
what comes up is just your own truth. And so you leave that mountaintop or that valley or that desert with a true story of with everything gets stripped away, what is the true narrative for Bo, for Mike, for whoever? And then again, the challenge is as you reintegrate back into society, how do I keep that true, I call it like soul-based living with this modern world?
Yeah. I love that, man. And I hope we have time. When it comes to the rites of passage thing, that always kind of takes me into obviously you work with men, I work with men, and I want to just kind of highlight some of the things you hear people say they kind of men are in a state of crisis right now. What are men looking for right now, as far as the people that you work with? Like, what are your thoughts around that? And obviously, I know how fortunate and we are to have. For my social circle, my friend group is second to none. Obviously, you're in there. There are a bunch of excellent humans that I can turn to on command. and in time of need. But I also know as a veteran that a lot of people don't have that community. So, what does that brotherhood in the community mean to men in America right now?
I mean, I think you answered it. Like you started off asking me, what do men need? And then you started with community, right? And so when you think of guys sitting around the bar in the movies talking about the glory days, what are those glory days? They're break down what that glory day looks like. It's probably surrounded by a bunch of friends, either overseas, doing something of service, feeling really embodied, having that challenge skills balance if they're in the military. It could look like high school sports, which is again with people challenging yourselves. For a lot of high school kids, it is like live or die, and these teams, like if they really embody that. And so, if these are the glory days, the best times of your life, how do you take that equation and then create the actions in your modern day for those things? And I think some of the stuff that you're doing is great. Like you're giving people and men specifically the opportunity to have a mission, something that they can train for, something that they can put themselves out into the world, get vulnerable, train to do, and then learn something. That was literally what happened with me in the Turkish Gov. I threw this big event, honored to be supported by Arsenal to do that event, and then I failed. I didn't hit the lift. I learned so much by myself. I'll never forget that day. That was one of the best things of my life. Even as much as it was challenging, there was so much opportunity that I could only learn that by doing that. Right. And that's why I like these runs. Like I've said this often. Like the conversations you have with yourself at mile 80, you can only have at mile 80.
Right.
And you can't get those any other place. And those are addicting conversations. Like I'm gonna fudge these numbers a tiny bit, but they're relatively close. The amount of people that do a half marathon and then do it again is probably like 20%. People that do a marathon and then do another marathon, it's like 25%. The amount of people that do 100-mile race and then do another one is like 80%.
Yeah.
Because the identity shift is so strong, and that then I'm like, wow, I'm someone that's capable of this. I want the opportunity to prove that to myself again. And so to answer your question, what are men missing? They're missing the opportunity to prove to themselves that they matter,
Yeah.
that they're strong, that like they are contributor to society. And my argument is give yourself the opportunity to do that. Seek out the opportunities to give yourself, you know, that agency.
Yeah, and what I've learned in the ultra endurance space is like your world gets very small very quickly, and what's important to you is brought front and center, right? And it's going to be your nutrition, right? Am I eating and hydrating? Obviously, but the big conversations of you're usually not thinking about work. You're thinking about loved ones. You're thinking about maybe missteps, things that you've been that are easy to like missteps in your life, things that you were easy to bury, especially when you're alone on these ultra endurance events. But then also how the simple things are now the most amazing thing in the world. Something like a honey bun or just water or seeing a loved one. You know what I mean? Like when you're out on the course and it's just you and versus raw nature, like your life gets very simple very quickly and a lot of bullshit melts away.
So that you nailed it. I mean, if you're ever sad, go to like the airport if international flights coming in and watching people reconnect, or go to 100-mile race and finish line.
Yeah.
Because it is impossible to not cry at the end and see just people putting themselves on the line. I mean, for the longest time, it was difficult for me to understand what it is that I just loved about the emotion, but that is really, I love watching people put themselves on the line and go for it. And the happiest, most supportive people I've ever met in my life are when I'm doing these ultra races. Like, I don't know if that's the case for you, but I mean, the crossing community, like the ultras community, they're so supportive because when you're standing at the beginning of a 100-mile race or specifically a 100-mile race, you know the dedication that went in. You're looking around at these hundreds of other people and you know that family sacrifice, the mental breakthroughs, the injuries, the time, the dedication, all these things that went into that. There's some special people around there.
Yeah.
And so I just think that that's a cool way of like viewing your life. And again, you don't need to run a 100-mile race in order to do this. Like look at that challenge and skills balance and find out what's the appropriate challenge that pushes you for your skill but I do think that you're capable of more than you think you are, and you can do more than you think that you could do.
Yeah, but there's a beauty in that simplicity of just dedicating yourself to just one thing. And especially in ultra endurance, it's one moment at a time. If you're at mile 20, you're thinking about mile 80, you're in trouble. You're
Mhm.
gonna be thinking about mile 20 and then mile 21. And it's just all of these small moments being present, having to stay present, pace, breathing, your body scans. Right. I think there's a beauty in that simplicity that is hard to replicate at mile 3. You know what I mean? And I kind of sound like a butthole when I say that, but it's like for me and for somebody that could be their mile 3, right? They're all ultimate. And I'm not taking that away, but there's something about devoting yourself to one long, hard effort that it's really difficult to replicate. And you certainly can't read about it. You could write a book just on what goes on in your mind at mile 80. And unless you've been there, you just don't know. You can't grasp it. You can't paint that picture for somebody. It's the thing you actually have to go do. Right. And that's experience it.
That's where I'm like big on the wilderness rites of passage, because you can do that. Like again, running 100 miles, it's really difficult. Sitting on your butt in a circle in a wild place, it's not that physically challenging. It's mentally and emotionally
Yeah.
challenging. And I think the hardest journey that humans take is that 18-inch road from your head to your heart.
Mhm.
And that is one of the best ways that I found to support people doing that. And it doesn't need to be a 4-day quest right off the bat. It can be finding a sit spot, which is a place in nature close by your house that you just go and allow yourself be bored. You start to develop a relationship with the inanimate natural world, the animals that live there, how the wind blows over the mountains, where the trees are growing, how the bark is on these specific trees based on the ants, whatever it may be. Like all of that attention to detail can then get transferred into these other aspects to help you live a greater life of core, like flourishing and meaning for whatever it is that's important to you.
Yeah, and we could delve in. We could have. I know you and I could probably have a podcast on any of these subjects that we covered. I want to kind of close this up. What advice would you have for somebody who wanted to take the least? I don't want to even say the least amount of steps. If somebody wanted to change direction and start a new path, what advice would you give them for their life to be different in 30 days?
Okay, someone wants a new path.
Well, just what advice would you have for somebody who's listening, whether they're struggling or not? What's some advice that you would give somebody that wanted to change their life in the next 30 days?
First, I make sure that like what is it that you want to change? Like really get clear on the why and the direction you want to go to. Because if it is a should, that is not strong, and you're gonna be fighting uphill in order to go in that direction. And so if it is something that's truly grounded within you, probably don't need a bunch of advice because you're gonna be motivated to do it.
Yeah.
And so my advice would be start small, let those compounding consistencies like compound over time. And then before you know it, you'll be doing something that you never thought you could do. I never thought we'd be running, 15 plus ultra marathons in my life.
Yeah.
Humble brag. I never thought I'd be able to do
Right.
that. And
Sure.
so, but after one, it's like, oh wow, I can do this. I mean, can I go even farther? Can I go even faster? How much heavier can I lift? What is possible for me? That starts with just a
So there's not just a set amount of coffee somebody can put up their ass that'll change their life, or 7-step routines, or sunning their butthole, or there's no perfect optimal plan for an individual. They actually have to sit and ask themselves what they really want. Is that what you're telling them, Mike?
Yeah, that is
Get
definitely.
the fuck out of here, man. That's never going to sell. That's never going to sell. That's bad for business.
I'm not a great businessman. I was a great coach, but yeah, I would say the key to that is starting with the vulnerability, because you probably tried that. Probably try to ask, what do I want? And you're like, I don't know, but let me look. Oh, that looks interesting. Oh, that looks cool. Oh, that gets a lot of likes. Let me try that thing.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily bad as long as you try the thing and then reflect it back onto yourself.
And then if it doesn't work, check that off, then try the next thing.
Yeah, yeah. But again, the point that I would really love to drive home is like just acknowledging where you're at. Hey, I'm struggling with this thing. You seem to be having a bow. You're coaching a bunch of high performers. You're super ripped. You're running these races, paddling, boarding across the ocean. Like, can I ask you a question? That would be, I guarantee if someone came up to you and said that, you'd be like, yeah, what's up?
100%.
No problem. And I bet most people that have gone through some type of challenging thing in their life and achieved some version of success would do the same thing. And so if you're wanting to grow in any area, give yourself the ability to ask that question.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's important is I recently, and we'll wrap it up here shortly, but I put up something on social media where I message all of my friends. I messaged you, I messaged Danny Strauss. I'm like, hey, how are you doing? And this is like men reaching out to other men. Um, I think there's another stigma with I've leaned on you in some very difficult times. And I think there's a stigma that like, oh, is like performance coaches or people that others are inspired by or aspire to be, that we also don't deal with these very same challenges. And I just think it's important to note that, when read, there's nothing weak or insecure or to reach out for help and ask for help.
It's literally the strongest thing you could do.
It's the strongest thing you can do. And I know the way I explain it to people is the reason I reach out to people as a coach is because I know the value in somebody reaching out and saying, hey, how are you? Or I need help. And so find, if you have those people in your life that check in on you, like hold them closely. But on the other side, if you do need help, reach out. There are people that do care. And I know, those of you listening, you can reach out to Mike, you can reach out to myself. There's nothing like asking for help is one of the strongest things you can do.
I think you nailed it. It is. And if you don't believe that, just think of the most successful people that you know in your life. I know for me, when I meet people who are at the top of their game, they have no problem asking questions.
And they have
A ton of
they all have coaches, multiple coaches. This other stigma that I don't need help and I don't need a coach is like if you don't get as a sport, if you were an athlete, if you don't get a sport coach or a skill coach, you're gonna become a dinosaur real quick. You want coaches and you want mentors in different areas of life. I don't need a strength coach, but I have a therapist, I have, mental skills coach, I have a business coach, I have somebody that does my taxes. It's no different. And so it's this concept of actually, if you want to become fluent, competent, build these skills, like maybe you don't need another book, maybe you don't need another podcast, you don't need another whatever, like just reach out and ask for freaking help.
both. Need some action.
We need some action. Mike, absolute pleasure, man. I'm sure we'll have you back, but I appreciate you, dude. Love you. And dude, I'll be there, lead man, again.
Let's go.
Hopefully I'm out there pacing you, dude. Super. Yeah. I'm just glad to be out there. Love you. And we'll connect soon. Thanks for listening, guys.
Love you too.